FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's Kerry Lutz. It's Manipulation Monday. No shortage of headlines. Everyone wants to succeed. Not succeed, but succeed. And hey, we're seeing it in Scotland. Vote coming up. And it's anybody's guess where it's going to be. But the mainstream media is trying to scare the daylights out of the Scottish. I think the Scottish are smarter than that, but we will see soon. But with us now is Andy Hoffman from Miles Franklin. Andy, welcome.
Hey, Kerry, how are you?
All right. So collapsing global economy, theme of the day, huh?
Are we doing collapsing global economy? Or why don't we start with the secession? Because this is an important issue right now.
Yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand, really.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, right? My article on Friday was called Secession Movement Gains Momentum, which was really just a sequel to an article I wrote called Unprecedented in August 2011. And then I saw another great article this weekend from the great Hugo Salinas Price of Mexico, who was saying, look, the root of all secessions is fiat money, because the people in charge divvy it out to who they want, and the people who don't get enough of it want to go out on their own, rightly or wrongly. And when you say things like you just mentioned, the Scottish, whether they know better or do the right thing, well, of course, the best thing to do is to secede, because whether there's short-term pain or not, the long-term benefit of escaping what I believe is the greatest financial oppressors of all time, the London-based cartel, is only going to be better. I have a good friend who's Scottish, and he said he hasn't lived there in years, but he of course would vote yes if he lived there. It's time to take control in our own hands. And actually, I just read this morning, I had no idea. I mean, I've been to Aberdeen many times when I was in the oil field service business, but I didn't realize that 90% of the North Sea oil and gas revenues would belong to Scotland. So this would be a devastating blow, probably more so to England itself with its overvalued pound than to Scotland.
Yeah, there's a lot of wealth in Scotland from the North Sea oil, and I only realized that recently because I was watching some car show, and the guy was buying cars in England and in southern Scotland and bringing them to northern Scotland, where they had a lot more money due to the oil boom. And I said, wow, he's arbitraging cars.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was an oil field service analyst for 10 years, most of it with Salmon Smith Barney. I took many, many trips to the UK to see rigs, to take companies public. And I didn't do those trips to London. I'd get to London, and then I'd hop on in a car and go up to Aberdeen. That's where all the action is. I just never really thought of it in terms of the fact that the actual ownership of the revenues would be that much of a split going to the Scottish side. So, Cameron, what's his name? David Cameron, the Prime Minister. He can talk all he wants about how it would be devastating to Scotland if this happened, and even the Queen chimed in. But the fact is, they just want their oil revenues. And unless they're going to go to war, a civil war against the newly independent Scotland for it, it's going to be a tremendous, tremendous blow to, again, this other economy with a fake recovery based on money printing and a fake housing boom in the high end market. I think England probably has the highest cost of living of any European country, and it has the most to fall, like the United States, once this fake real estate boom crashes. And my God, if this Scottish vote, which right now is pretty much 50-50, goes yes, this will be cataclysmic for the Bank of England, and it will send shockwaves throughout Europe. Because again, we're talking about all these other secession movements. The one that's really front and center is the one in Catalonia, Spain, which they're having their vote in the middle of November. Right now, by far, it's expected to pass. It's supposed to expect it to pass easily, and that's 25% of Spain's revenues, tax revenues, right there. That's no joke. Venice, Italy, already had their initial vote, and I think 90% of the people voted for it, and that's 10% of Italy's GDP.
You know, wouldn't it be interesting if Doug Casey's vision of the demise of the nation state came about democratically, Andy? If one day we had a referendum in the United States to split up into 6 or 8 different countries, I mean, you can't really imagine it happening. I mean, you can only imagine it. You know, you just can't see the United States just saying, "Oh, we'll just let the country split up." But yeah.
I doubt it would happen democratically. I mean, I believe from the beginning. In fact, I was going to title the article "Secessions and Expulsions," but I didn't want to get too complex because there's just as much odds that some countries and or states around the world are kicked out. You know, what is more likely, that Germany secedes from the euro currency, or that they gang up and kick out Portugal and Greece? You know, you just never know how geopolitical events will occur. And the same goes with California. We talked about there's a movement of parts of California to secede. But as far as I'm concerned, I've written about this many times, California is the biggest albatross on this entire nation, which is sad because it's the biggest economy in the nation, but it has the most debt. It has the most social and environmental issues. It's running out of water on top of that. And I truly believe that if worse came to worse, there's just as equal a chance of California being expelled as Texas seceding.
Yeah, you think about it. Texas has its own power grid, and the amount of oil that they're producing now, right now, it's over 2 million barrels a day. Forget about natural gas. It's going to go up to 3 million barrels a day. And you know, the amount of cash that the state government could pick up by becoming a republic again, it just makes sense for them to get the hell out of this mess called the United States, right?
Yeah. Well, remember, the other great part about seceding is that you no longer have the same debt obligations. It's kind of like Scotland and England. How do you even figure out what's a sovereign debt and what's a public debt and a private debt? I mean, Texas has been horribly mismanaged. I mean, let's not kid ourselves here. But the fact is, they can renege on a lot of that debt and say, well, come and get us because we have all the oil. And by the way, Texas is the only state that was once its own independent country. And a lot of the people down there truly believe that it should be its own independent country. So I'm not saying this is happening now, but I'm saying the fact is that we're already getting down that road in Europe. I mean, Europe is first world, right? I mean, there's just as many people there as here, and they've been around longer than us. And we are at the point where the equivalent of Texases are starting to think about actually getting out. And it's only a matter of time before that cancer spreads around the world and gets to us. And in what form it takes and exactly when, I don't know. But it's naive to believe that that's not going to happen in any place where the currencies collapse, as Hugo Salinas Price was talking about.
Yeah, interesting analysis of things, and I think that it's fairly accurate that people are fed up with economic mismanagement. And I don't know if you caught the presentation by our friends Gordon T. Long and Charles Hugh Smith about the evolution of crony capitalism, but they so nailed it, and it's all takes place because of central banks. It's right. All enabled by them.
Right. And it all goes back to that simple term, wealth inequality. And that's what Price is talking about. It's probably what Charles Hugh Smith is talking about. Because of the fiat currency system, a handful of people in charge get to control it. The central bankers, the politicians, they all pay each other off. And the money goes into the hands of Wall Street. And those people get it and everyone else doesn't. And that's why people get mad. People get mad within their own country. And sometimes countries within trading blocks, like in Europe. So, I mean, it's not even a question of if it will happen. It's a matter of when. And it's amazing. I mean, we talk about how much they're holding gold and silver down. I mean, we are literally talking about the breakup of the European Union right here. Trust me, if Scotland goes, it's going to start a huge amount of secessionist movements. Catalonia, I mean, Spain is already as bankrupt as can be. If their biggest tax revenue block leaves, and I frankly think the Catalonia movement is much stronger than the Scotland movement, I mean, what's going to happen to Spain? Spain's the 5th largest economy there. We're reading this weekend about big gains in the German elections they had over the weekend by the anti-Euro party. I mean, why on earth would Germany want to hold on to this currency union? They are being dragged down. They are the Titanic being dragged down by the anchor.
Yeah, it's a movement that's really picking up steam, and it just makes total sense. Because how else do you get out from underneath the thumb of the oppressors when you think about it, right?
Yeah,
that's the best way.
And it all comes down to ways of reneging on debt. I mean, if Germany leaves the union, or if they expel Greece and say, here, take all this debt to yourself, I mean, everyone knows that they're in over their head with no chance of ever reversing it. So you're always thinking, how can I avoid this financial burden, whether I do it legally or not? And believe me, when you secede, it's no different than being expelled. You're going to figure out ways to not pay your debts and say, hey, we're an independent Greece now. We're not European Union Greece. We don't owe you the $400 billion that we owed you. Sorry.
We don't know who it was. Go over to the ECB and ask them. Ask Mario Draghi.
Goldman Sachs. You gave us Goldman Sachs as advisors, and they told us to do it all off balance sheet. It's going to be great for us. Well, you know what? You can take your Goldman Sachs. That includes you, Mario Draghi, and Mark Carney, all the European guys from Goldman Sachs, and shove it, because we're not paying the debts that you guys foisted upon us.
And it could be the ultimate debt dodge is just go form your own country and disavow all knowledge of any other debt and go to the old country. That was their debt. That's not ours. Right. They still have it.
And there's your title for today, Ultimate Debt Dodge or Ultimate Debt Jubilee.
Yeah.
But the fact is, I mean, how many times do we have to talk about, fiat currency is a Ponzi scheme. It grows and it grows and it grows. The debt is unpayable, and then it has to be reneged. I'm not even talking about secessions here. I'm saying the debt has to be paid. And it's either going to get paid by reneging or by hyperinflation. And one way of reneging or hyperinflation is secessions and expulsions. And some people may believe it's due to nationalist reasons. Heck, there are probably a lot of people in Scotland oblivious to it. It's like, yeah, why not? I want to be my own person. But, if you're talking about the big businesses, they just want to be out from under the anchor that is the Bank of England.
Hey, and don't forget, for businesses, it's a wonderful thing, too, because you just get rid of all the regulation. Start out with no regulation, and you start out with a clean canvas, right? A white canvas. And you start over with minimal regulation. Start out with low taxes. So there's articles about Scotland becoming like the Switzerland of Europe. And
trust me, there'll be people there that think of it that way. And the funny thing is, when you listen to David Cameron's ridiculous speech, I didn't hear it word for word, but the gist of it is, all the London banks are going to leave their headquarters in Scotland, and all the UK banks will leave Scotland and go to London. Good, get the hell out of there. I mean, these are the companies that have destroyed Scotland, that have destroyed the UK, that have destroyed the world. Who the heck needs Lloyd's of London or
Royal
what's
Bank?
That other one? Oh, Royal Bank of Scotland.
RBS, yeah, sure.
I mean, they're not going anywhere. But who needs these companies? They are the anathema. They are the ones that have destroyed the country. Those are the ones that you want out of the country. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a golden opportunity to get rid of the banksters and start this thing over the way it should be. And I don't think they'll go to a metals-backed currency, but they'll come up with something better.
Well, right? They don't have metals in Scotland because all the metal
they got.
They don't have metal in London anymore either. There's nothing left in the whole place. But
they have oil.
Wealth, what?
They got oil, so they could trade for gold, right?
That's right. It's like Texas. I mean, in fact, it wasn't until I saw that article this morning that I even imagined what would have driven Scotland to do this. Because it's not like you think of Scotland as this poor, oppressed area. I mean, I'm not British. I'm not from the UK, so I don't really know the dynamics of what's going on there. But now that we have this conversation here and you think of it, it's really not much different than Texas. Texas wants out of the United States because it doesn't want to be dragged down by the anchor, when it knows it could take care of itself. And that's probably exactly what's going on there.
Yeah. I mean, there's a certain logic to it, except that in the U.S., we actually fought a war over states trying to succeed. Forget about slavery and all the side issues. The fact of the matter is the South called it the Northern War of Aggression, and it was really all about the states' right to succeed from the Union, the Southern states. And I don't think they've got anybody that's going to stop them here.
Yeah, I mean, there was obviously economics involved, the economics of slavery, and not just slavery, but also, the hugely different economic bases of the North and the South. One was agriculture, one was industry, et cetera. So there was a lot of things going on. But the fact is, the Civil War was not fought about figuring out ways to renege debt. There was barely any debt back then. Heck, There was a gold standard. But this is completely different. That was not the South was in dire trouble and needed to get out, or the North was in dire trouble and needed to kick the South out. This is now about that. The ones who want to leave want to escape from the economic hell that's been created, and the ones that are going to be kicked out are being kicked out because the people who expel them believe that they're going to escape from some financial hell.
Yeah. So, but unintended consequences here. You have to think about them, and we don't know what they'll be, but you could be certain there will be unintended consequences if they get out. So, life is not a bowl of cherries here for these newly formed countries. There's a lot of work involved in creating a viable state, especially in an era where the power of the state, I believe, is going to start eroding and is eroding at this very moment. So they got their work cut out for them, but getting freedom from the oppressors in London, probably not a bad idea. And we're going to see the effect of the propaganda on the common Scottish person if they fall for that line of bull, right?
Yeah, and remember, of course, the short-term ramifications are going to be hideous. I mean, between Scotland itself, the UK, Europe, what's going to go on with other secession movements, and of course, what could happen in the currency markets and the gold markets, and what central banks will do, and will there be potential revolutions? I mean, all could be stemming from this major vote, not necessarily the next day, but it's kind of like with China when people say, well, if the dollar collapses and gold surges in value, then China will be doing great. Well, yeah, one day, once the dust settles and you realize they have all the gold, and but in the meantime, we're talking about cataclysmic, one-time, generational events that are going to have major social and political and economic ramifications.
We're talking blood in the streets.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's starting already. I mean, we've seen so many of these revolutions just in the last 3 years, which coincides, of course, with the real major money printing explosion, circa 2011, 2012. So, you go to Turkey, you go to Brazil, you go to Thailand, Ukraine, Iraq, you name it, Ferguson, Missouri. It's everywhere right now, and it's just getting started. And you look right now at the supposed dollar strengthening everyone's getting excited about, which I've been writing about, forever, but starting in the last few days. This, quote, dollar strengthening, which is, supposedly catalyzed by the ECB printing their own money, has caused yet another wave of massive devaluation of currencies the world around, from the yen to the euro to the Russian ruble, which Putin won't be so happy about, the Brazilian real, the Indian rupee, everything. The South African rand is plunging right now, which means more inflation, more social unrest, and more secession-type movement.
It's really a hideous outcome. And it's a small country like Scotland might get through it unscathed. When you start looking at bigger countries, and understand Scotland is pretty much semi-autonomous now, they're not relying on London for a lot of stuff, right? So it's kind of like their common defense. That's pretty much it. Man, you start breaking up a country like Spain, and all hell is going to break loose here, Andy.
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously, certain places more will feel more than others, and obviously, a tiny country with a huge amount of oil revenues, is going to be in far better shape than Spain, which is literally just an absolute utter basket case. There is not one redeeming aspect of the Spanish economy or the social situation right now. They are barely a notch above Greece, which is on the verge of turning into Nazi Germany right now. It's so bad. So yes, Scotland will, if this goes by, I would guess would be in dramatically better shape than some of the other places in the world. And that, of course, would include the United States, which with its 340 million people and its massive imports of everything you could possibly need around the world, and its job issues and its entitlements. I'm not so worried about Scotland, but yeah, Spain is much closer to a real cataclysm than most people can even imagine.
Yeah, and the breakup of the country, and you could see a civil war occurring if they succeed. You really could see it happening.
Well, put it this way, if Catalonia, which I strongly believe is gonna vote yes, and by the way, if Scotland votes yes, Catalonia's yes is going to be 100% guaranteed. In the bag, as will Venice's and a whole bunch of new ones. If Catalonia votes yes, I think it's November 18th or something like that. That's it for Spain. That's it for everything. Anyone who possibly wanted to try to hype something positive about economies or negative precious metals, there is no way the world could survive economically. I don't care how much money you print, markets you manipulate, that it could survive something as horrible as Spain breaking up, which is essentially, as you just said, what a Catalonia yes vote is.
And Spain has been a country since the 1300s, 1400s, since Columbus, shortly before Columbus, when Queen Isabel married, I can't remember the king, it's been a unified, Ferdinand. It's been a unified country. The thought of Spain breaking up, it's got to send shockwaves through the world. And yet, as long as the stock market keeps going up, Andy, like here in the U.S., nobody is any the wiser for it.
Yeah, right? But we're talking. I mean, again, I talk about the evil tripod of manipulation, market, money printing, and propaganda. And I've been saying lately how the propaganda leg is if not already broken, it's just about, because at some point the reality of the global economy. I mean, to say that anyone really believes that the stock market is a gauge of economic activity or even expectations when no one even owns stocks anymore, hence CNBC having all-time low. Can you imagine CNBC all-time low ratings with an all-time high stock market? The point is no one's listening. No one cares. No one believes that because the Dow is higher, that means the economy is getting better. It's getting to be that at some point that doesn't work. Obviously, the money printing leg is starting to not work because you're now seeing nothing but debt and economic misery. And then the last thing to go, of course, will be the market manipulation. You can't keep gold and silver down forever. You can't press them below the cost of production when you have record high demand and plunging supply. I mean, what are they, insane? We're talking about the COMEX, where the open interest is exploding because people are shorting it, but there's no silver out there. I mean, something's going to give. It's given several times in recent years, and I believe the next time that physical paper dichotomy breaks, it's never going to return.
Yeah, it's for good. It's for good, no doubt. And you just have to look. The IMF reducing the GDP forecast, World Bank warning of global jobs crisis, China's GDP growth worst since 2008, and you look at their numbers, the government's spitting out, and then you look at the negative year-over-year electricity output, which is really the truth there, and that even China, the engine of the world's growth, is not doing too well.
Well, again, it comes back to the island of lies stuff, which all the governments lie about economic data. But I did a chart maybe, 3 or 4 months ago showing those diffusion indices that I talk about all the time. Mm-hmm. Like this morning, you had the Empire State Manufacturing Index surge. It exploded higher. The only problem is the employment component plunged into oblivion. which is exactly what happened with the Chicago PMI last month. And guess what? It was a horrible employment report. That's what happens in the real world. But the chart that I did a few months ago, it compared GDP with diffusion indices in France, the US, and China. And in China, which reports every quarter 7.5%.
7.5%, yeah.
Every quarter, they had in the first quarter an average of 48 on their PMI manufacturing. So in other words, their manufacturing data that the government itself publishes is telling you that they're in recession, yet they say they're growing 7.5%. We in the States here said in the first quarter that our average PMI was 54, meaning strongly growing, and we had minus 3% GDP. And France, which is the funny one, was right at 50, and their unemployment was right, and their GDP was right at 0. So it's almost like none of these guys could figure out what the hell to do. And when you see Chinese data, it's almost comical. But as you say, not only were the numbers that they published the lowest in years, the capex number was the lowest in I think 12 years. But what do you call it here? And I'm losing my track here. What are we talking about? Diffusion indices?
Yeah.
Oh, the electricity. Yeah, the real numbers, like electricity growth, are negative. They're telling you we're having a recession in the industrial output, in the industrial usage area, and yet you're supposed to believe that we have a 7.5% GDP growth.
Right. Sure thing. Yeah, well, on that note, we got to go find Andy's writing on milesfranklin.com along with Bill Holter's Daily Missive, and go over to Financial Survival Network. You'll see that we're getting literally dozens of articles every day, relevant, actionable articles that you need to be informed. Check the site out. I mean, Stefan just does an incredible job on getting those articles, and a lot of them from Miles Franklin too, from Zero Hedge, from all over the place. So you only need to go to one place to find all the info that's relevant to your daily reading. Sign up for our newsletter. Got one coming out shortly. Hey, and also on the site, you'll see in the upper left-hand corner, we got a free webinar coming up September 24th, 9 p.m. Be there. It's free. And Andy, we will see you next week.
Excellent. Look forward to it.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.